Welcome back everybody to linuxacademy.com. My name is Terry, and in today's video we're going to continue our exploration of Nginx, the warp-powered web server. In our last video we looked at the upstream directive in terms of how it can allow us to proxy service connections to an underlying HTTP or any other service so that Nginx inserts itself as a proxy for that initial connectivity. So in the last video, what we did is we created an upstream Node.js application listening on port 8888, and then we proxied that using the upstream reference mynode to HTTP and then www.mynode.local. So that it effectively redirected anytime that we referred to that particular domain to the underlying service listening on port 8889. One of the other things that upstream can do is it can do load balancing across multiple web servers. Now, those web servers can be multiple services listening on the same physical or virtual host, or they can be references to other servers or domains on one or more ports, and will load balance either through round robin, or which is each individual connection gets the next server in a list. So if we have a 2-node web farm, for example, first connection gets web server number 1, second connection gets web server number 2, third connection goes back to web server number 1. And then we have some control over the weighting or the type of load balancing that we can instantiate using our upstream derivative. So let's go ahead and set up a local 2-node Node.js system that we can load balance using our upstream directive. So if you remember from our last video, we created in var www HTML, we had a node directory. So we're not going to change that. Let's go over here to node, and all we're going to do is a couple of things. Let's copy the server.js file to server2.js. We're going to make a second instance, and all we're going to do here is we're going to edit the port that it's running on and the file that that particular server will be serving. So by default, it runs on 8888 and it serves index.html if you don't pass any other information to it. And in this case, what we wanted to do is we wanted to serve index2.html. That's all that we're going to make a change to. So let's make a copy of our index.html. Well, actually, let's just overwrite them. Let's do echo. This is server 1, and we'll call that index.html. And then we'll do echo. This is server 2, and we'll write that to index2.html. Now we have to go back over here to our vhost directory. And if you'll remember, in our last video, we created the mynode.local for our upstream directive. So let's take a look at that and make a couple of edits. So in the mynode.local, all we're going to do here, we're not going to change the name of the upstream directive. We're simply going to add another instance. So we're going to say localhost 8889, and then we're going to save the file. Now the directive mynode in upstream, referred to in this proxy pass for the location for www.mynode.local, will actually load balance round robin, first this one, then this one on subsequent connections. So let's go ahead and save this file. We'll run the nginx-t to be sure that we haven't made any mistakes, which we haven't. And then we'll do a service nginx restart. And again, we could do a reload if we just wanted to reload the configuration and we were worried about kicking off anyone who might be connected to any of our other domains, because at this point we have the default domain, the myexample domain, and the mynode domain that are listening. So let's run a couple of tests. So if we do a links on HTTP localhost port 8888, we'll see that this is server 1. And if we do it on 8889, we'll see we haven't started it. So we need to make sure that we start the var www. So let's go change back to that directory, var www server 1 has been started, so all we're going to do is node server 2 JS, and we'll make sure we run that one in the background. So now it's also listening on 8889. And now we see this is server 2. So if we do a PS and just grep for node, we'll see that there are 2 node instances that are running. Server.js and server2.js, 8889 and 8888. Now what does that mean? What it should mean at this point is if we've done everything right, we do a links to HTTP www.mynode.local, and it should give us one of the 2 servers. Okay, we get server 2. Now if we exit out of this, if we've done everything right, we should get server 1 next. We get server 1 next. And our next connection should be server 2. And then back to server 1. Now, the only reason that we're seeing the clear load balancing round robin between these is because that we're the only one connecting to these particular servers. So if we were load balancing across multiple nodes in an environment where there were multiple website connections coming in, we wouldn't be able to see, unless we had another monitoring solution in place, that we were getting a 1-to-1 ratio between round robining between the multiple nodes. So weighting is in terms of the weight of the number of connections that are sent to any node in our stream. So if we go back over here to our Etsy Nginx and vhost directory, we can assign weight values to our individual nodes. So let's take a look at how to do that. www.mynode.local.conf. And all we need to do right here is at the end of our port, we're going to append a value called weight. So weight equals 1. And that's the lowest weighting that you can give a particular IP. If we do weight equals 4, it's proportional, meaning that anything with a weight of 4 in a 2-node cluster where the other server is weighted as 1 will be should get 4 times the amount of traffic of the first node. So if we save this, and we do an nginx-t to make sure we haven't made any configuration mistakes. Let's go ahead and clear this. Do a service nginx restart. Now when we do our connectivity, we should see a difference versus the server 1, server 2, server 1, server 2 that we saw before. So if we do my node.local, we'll see server 1. That's weight of 1. Now we should see server 2. Now, if we've done it right, we should see server 2 again, which we do. So that's twice the load, 3 times the load, 4 times the load. Now the next one should be 1. So you see that there's a lot of flexibility that can be added from an Nginx perspective. This is a method of doing some basic load balancing. Now there's some other directives that we can use in Nginx and Nginx Plus especially that gives you different load balancing methodologies like least connections. You can use IP hashes for session management. So we'll cover some of those in the more advanced vhost and upstream directive configuration videos. But for using Nginx as a basic load balancer across multiple nodes or services running on one or more systems, that's all there is to it. My name is Terry from Linux Academy.